This has to be one of the weirdest situations I've ever covered on the series, because today I'm talking about the death of something that some claim has never lived. You see, Sony has stated that the Sonyverse, as fans have called it, has actually never existed, and that the 3 Venom films and the 3 other standalone Spidey non-Spidey outings, those being Morbius, Madam Web, and Kraven, were never intended to be connected. They were all just their own short stories that were never meant to be in sync. But with all due respect, that is a bold-faced lie. Before I even get into further detail, you really want your audience to believe in the day and age of connected cinematic universes, especially regarding superheroes, when Sony's plans for a Sinister Six movie have been teased for the last decade or so, that these solo outings of B and C-list characters were never meant to amount to anything more. I'm sorry, but based on that alone, I'm just not buying it. But add to it all the references these movies made in regards to each other, like Venom getting name-dropped in Morbius without any rhyme or reason.
I am Venom.
The font from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and having that same movie end with Michael Keaton's Vulture somehow making his way into the universe by the end of it. Wow, what a downgrade. It's like going from A to Z in the relevancy alphabet. Or even how Venom made his way into the MCU for that brief spell. All to be sent back home without any interaction with any major Marvel movie character whatsoever. You want me to believe that you didn't have any bigger plans? Madam Web's plot sees the one-day Madam form a friendship with her coworker Uncle Ben, or as she knows him, Ben, as well as his pregnant sister-in-law, which would be Spider-Man's mom. Oh, and of course they use this very important shot from the Sam Raimi films. A movie would not be complete without it, thank you so much. And with it, it solidifies that this movie is a complete piece of thwip. That's not me even counting all the references that were made in the movies that wound up on the cutting room floor. Images of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, the list goes on. These movies weren't just trying to tie into each other, they were trying to tie into anything successful that they could. To a much lesser and much more tolerable extent, I think you could say the same about the Spiderverse movies. But those were actually, good movies with a lot of substance and a lot of heart. So it's easy to overlook, or at other times even applaud them for these nostalgia trips. They're decorative window dressing. They're not the window itself. I would even say that there's merit in the Venom movies. I know that they're not everyone's cup of tea, and some people on the internet really like to trash them, and I understand where they're coming from. They're definitely not the most comic-accurate adaptations of the anti-hero. But at least they were better than whatever this was.
Ooh, my spider sense is tingling. If you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, shit! Where you going? What are you doing? This is much worse than I thought.
I actually want to talk in much more detail about the Venom movies because there's so much to love and also hate in them. So if you'd maybe be interested in seeing a video on that, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying, for now, for the most part, we can just strike them from the record. Because right now I will be focusing on these 3 standalone films that were never actually meant to be standing alone. The first major issue with these 3 movies is that they shouldn't exist to begin with. And I say that respectfully. My dream Marvel project would actually be a story that pits him against the Punisher, because I think there's some real stories to tell with these 2 expert assassins at war with one another. As a vampire fan, I've always loved Morbius. Granted, I've always felt that he was a little bit out of place in the world of Spider-Man, but I still love the guy nonetheless. And Madam Web, well, I knew she existed, so that's something. I'm sorry, I just never really got into the character. But while I knew that all 3 of these characters were out there, that doesn't mean that everyone else did. Out of the 3, I would say that there was probably the most merit in a Kraven project. But even in saying that, none of these characters were exactly household names. Sure, some Spider-Man fans are aware of these characters, but the general public is not. I'm not saying that any of these characters don't belong on the big screen, but I don't believe they belong at the center of the big screen. Kraven and Morbius would be fine as on-screen villains, but in a Spider-Man movie. they just aren't strong enough or well known enough to justify these projects on their own, let alone in standalones that have next to no mentions of the webhead. When these trailers dropped, there was plenty of confusion from people who weren't in the know, and they're entirely forgiven for not knowing that these were semi-Spider-Man related films. And because of that, these movies were sort of dead on arrival. The big problem with Sony is that they weren't willing to learn a lesson. If they were, there probably wouldn't be so many of these films, as each and every one of them has been a box office bomb and a critical failure. But not only did they not learn lessons from their own mistakes, they also didn't learn lessons from others. Aaron Taylor Johnson was cast as Kraven. Because, I don't know, I guess we didn't learn our lesson from the last time this guy tried an accent in a superhero movie.
You didn't see that coming?
Dakota Johnson was cast as Madam Web. Because, I don't know, I guess we didn't learn our lesson from the last time this woman was blindfolded on the big screen. And Jared Leto was cast as Morbius. Because, I don't know, I guess we didn't learn our lesson from the last time this man played a strange-faced villain to a superhero that's barely present.
That's how you meant that.
Nobody cared before, and nobody cared after. I'm not trying to trash these actors because I actually happen to love ATJ, and he's actually done really good work in superhero films before. But there is such a thing as not being right for the part. The one Spidey supervillain turned main protagonist that people enjoyed was Venom, which is why it spawned 2 more sequels. And there were even hints of him one day making his MCU debut. And make no mistake, that's because people really enjoy Tom Hardy's Venom. And Tom Hardy enjoyed being Venom. You could tell that he had the passion for the part. He loved what he was doing. And he worked just as much behind the scenes as he did in front of them as the character. His creative input played a part in the making of these 3 films. The Venom trilogy is his baby. Now, compare that to these 3 other cinematic abortions. I don't think anybody was passionate in making Madam Web or Kraven. Not the actors, not the directors, nobody. It was mandated work, and it was probably a chore for the cast and crew to get through. Unfortunately, it was even more of a chore for an audience to get through. Not that many tried. Morbius, on the other hand, probably meant a lot to one person, and it was the same person who was actively making sure it was meaningless to everyone else. I really don't want to sound like a broken record here. I know I've used these exact words in the past, pretty recently actually, but it doesn't make them any less true. The real issue behind these stories was that there was no story to tell. It was a studio mandate, and the final product shows it. They're soulless, substanceless cash grabs that the public saw through by not seeing them at all. And I think acting like they were never supposed to be tied together is sort of Sony's way of preserving the one success it saw in Venom. Venom is still going. I wouldn't be surprised if we got more sequels and more Tom Hardy. The rest of these movies are, well, probably better off forgotten. What sucks the most about this is I really feel that the Sony Spider-Verse stint has kind of damaged Sony's reputation. A little unfairly so. Because it's not like Sony isn't capable of giving us good Spider-Man movies. They created the greatest line of Spider-Man films with Tobey Maguire. They created the worst line of Spider-Man films with the greatest Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield. And in more recent memory, they've given us the Spider-Verse movies that may just give that first line of films a run for its money. Even if the star of those films is giving his cast members a reason to run away from him.
I'm gonna watch Paper Moon, just so I...
So you know?
Just so I can, be closer to Haley.
Sony has made some of, or at least played a major part in the making of some of the greatest Spider-Man movies ever made. These are just bad examples of them. And unfortunately, they were bad examples that happened in short succession, making the brand look completely inept. In the end, the Sonyverse died because it didn't need to exist to begin with. And everyone knew that. Probably even Sony after a while. So here's to hoping that these villains get another shot on the big screen. Poor Rhino's already been ruined twice. Which is really sad because I don't know how you ruin that character once. PS1 Spider-Man already laid the groundwork out for you.
Well, if it ain't Bug Boy!
Look at that. Perfection. With that in mind, if you like this video as much as I didn't like making it, if you might be interested in a deep dive in each of these, well, let's be nice and call them films, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying,
Nobody wants to be Spider-Man.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso.
Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.